Hey everybody, Asian Fasha Gamer here. I just want to take a second, put out a small disclaimer to let you all know that I am not a mental health professional. I just want to do my best to be able to help others with my own experience, and at the very least, hope to be able to point people in the right direction if they do need help. And of course, I also want to remind people that we do go into very heavy and potentially triggering subjects. So that is something to be considered. But I do appreciate your support for you being here. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy this episode of Fahzaly Advice. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fahzaly Advice. I want to take a second to say thank you to you, the viewer. It means the absolute world that you have been watching, enjoying, and have found value in my words. Thank you so very much, for this podcast means the world to me. Now, let's get on into our first submission, which is quite special as it is brought to us by my fellow co-host and fellow content creator, Audacia, whom you might be familiar with from my Bunch of Goofs livecast podcast on Mondays, or DN Doofs or Democracy and Dummies on YouTube and Twitch every Friday. They are also known for a podcast that they do with their significant other known as the Slovak Farm, in which they go over needlework and stitchwork in an absolutely adorable manner. I do tag them regularly in my videos in the description, and they will also be tagged in this video description. I highly recommend you check them out if you have not already. Now, let's get on into their first submission, shall we? And they write, Fasha, I recently thought about how important phrasing can be in a conversation. For example, a lot of my non-religious and atheist friends hate it when a Christian says, I will pray for you, unprompted. They feel like they are having another person's religion forced on them, or as an insult, that they are so bad that they need God's intervention. I, on the other hand, have asked my friends when they are dealing with personal problems, would you like me to pray for you? And everyone has said yes. I find that if I ask for consent to do so, and if they are comfortable with the premise, they thank me for asking and for having the basic form of consideration rather than egotism. Just the simple act of making it a question made people go from hell no to yes please, I would accept that, appreciate that. I would love for this to be discussed on Fahzaly Advice. Sincerely, Audacia. Well, Audacia, thank you so much for bringing this subject to Fahzaly Advice, as I believe this is quite an important subject to talk about. But before we get on into this, I do want to preface this with a few things. 1. Me personally, my philosophy has always been to attempt to remove subtext and to be able to speak directly, to say what I mean and mean what I say, despite the fact that I do have somewhat of a monotone voice, in some people's regards can be quite aggressive at times, which is why I attempt to do my best to say what I mean and reiterate to people that I might not sound like it, but this is what I mean when I'm saying it, because I say what I mean. But there are things that have challenged this philosophy in my life, and this is one of those concepts. And for me to grow as a person, it is a concept that I have been slowly working on trying to accept and do better with. Now, another thing that I do have to state is I personally am not of any form of religious denomination. I have studied multitudes of scriptures in length for the sake of the fact that I personally enjoy studying cultures, religions, and mythology, as well as history. Now, I personally, though, am not of any form of organized theistic denomination. I was raised Buddhist, but I have my own personal beliefs. Those aside, though, when it comes to any form of submission to Fahzaly Advice, religious or not, I do not put any form of that connotation within there, and I'm trying to do my best to give advice to the subject at hand. So please keep that in mind as we move forward. Now then, as I stated, this is quite an important subject to talk about. And for me personally, it is one that I have struggled with because I have been somebody who's attempted to remove subtext from my life. But it is important to consider how something is being said. For when it comes to a conversation, we put it into a, what's the word I'm looking for? To put it into a metaphor, you are the pilot, and your words are the plane. You are responsible for how that plane lands, and the runway is the person you are talking to. How you say something, how you land the plane, can determine whether or not it's received well or it's not. And it is something to consider when you're saying something and how you're saying something. In regards to something like, I will pray for you, when it comes to saying that to somebody who is of a non-religious or atheist belief or thought process, or somebody who is not of a Abrahamic faith in general, the thought process of saying, I will pray for you, though with good intentions, still comes off quite egotistical. More often than not, it comes off with the air of, I'm better than you, I know better than you, and thus I will do this for you because I know better than you. But when you change it in the way that my friend Oda here has done, into a question of asking for consent in a way that essentially states, I would like to include you in my everyday rituals, in compassion, in the hopes that something goes better for you. That lands so much better than, oh, I'll pray for you, which comes off quite dismissive, which has a connotation of really an egotistical mindset of, I know better than you, or that my religion is better than you. And when it comes to belief, that should never be the mindset, in my opinion, of course. Belief should be something about oneself. And of course, it also should be about the betterment of one's self, not being better than another. So it is something to be considered. And keep in mind, I'm not saying that people who say, I pray for you, are all evil or vile or they're egotistical. It's simply the connotation that comes with that particular saying that might not be considered by somebody. Because once again, in a conversation, when you say something or when you're responding, you are the pilot. Your words are the plane, and the person you're speaking to is the runway. You are responsible for how that plane lands. So when you consider that, consider how you're saying for what you are saying. Because good intentions are all good and well, but the road to ruin can be paved with good intentions. Just because you have good intentions doesn't mean the results of your actions will have good intentions or will result in good in general. And in that instance, good intentions mean absolutely nothing. What matters is how you act and what you consider, so much more than a singular aspect. And this goes into something much larger that needs to be considered, which is the dismissal within that statement of another person as an individual. You considering the world as a monolith for oneself and one's belief without considering the individual in front of you and who they are and the experiences that they have and what they believe in, which is completely different than yourself, where they are not you. And this is something that needs to be considered for anybody who's listening. And I'm not trying to pinpoint anybody here, because in a conversation, as long as there's no malice involved or visceral nature involved, no one's truly at fault until it devolves into that form of nature. But a conversation can always be led in compassion and can stay in that particular wheelhouse as long as you're willing to consider more than just your own belief and your own mindset, to open your mind to the consideration that the world is vast and wide, and that just because you had an experience doesn't mean someone else had that same experience. And even if they did, doesn't mean that they perceived it in the same way. We as people, as a society, especially in this modern day, in my opinion, once again, I state opinion, all right? But in my opinion, seem to want to judge whatever's in front of us through the monolithic concept of whatever we seem to think is the right at the moment, without considering that each instance, each moment is unique and needs to have a full range of consideration to everything involved in all concepts, without blinding ourselves to thinking of just one singular way. We, as living, thinking human beings, are not given the ability to think, to pigeonhole ourselves into a singular monolithic concept when we as living beings are not. We are constantly in flux, constantly growing, ever changing, ever learning, and experiencing in our own unique ways. And in this world, nobody lives to agree with another, and we don't live to have the same experience. We're not all the same person. We don't all come out cookie cutter. We're not meant to be like that. We are all unique, and in that uniqueness, we need to accept, elaborate, and flourish. It's only then can we grow as a species, as a society, as a mindset. Because words have more weight than we realize, but it is only given power by those who listen. There is so much to consider, and it might be daunting, it might be scary, but do not be cowed by this and become lazy in how you think. That's a disservice to yourself as a living, thinking, breathing human being. Think, therefore you are. Consider. Allow your mind to grow. Do not shell yourself into a singular mindset and concept that you cannot consider more. And I know this tangent might seem like it's getting off topic, but it's something to consider in its entirety when it comes to each moment you live in, each moment that passes in front of you, each person you interact with. It is all unique in its own sense, even if it doesn't feel like it. Even if it feels like every day might be the same, every day has its own minute differences to consider. And as mind-boggling as that might be, all of that is part of life. All of that is part of who we are. And all of that needs to be considered. As harrowing as it can be, as confusing as it might be, that is part of life. That is part of being alive. That is part of considering the interactions between other living beings that are unique in their own right. But as long as we consider this, we can continue to move forward in compassion rather than in ignorance, closing ourselves off to allow for nothing more than an area for hatred to grow. It's only in understanding, in growing, that we can become more and overcome a weakness like hatred. And it's through our words, and it's through that understanding that we can overcome that. So consider that when you talk to another. Consider that when it comes to your phrasing. Consider that when it comes to how you'll respond to someone going through hard times and what you want to say. Because saying something like, I will pray for you, can seem quite dismissive. And using that as a catch-all, well, it's just doing a disservice to yourself, isn't it? Because you're smarter than that. Consider all of this, my friends. And I appreciate you, Oda, for your submission and for bringing this discussion to the table. Really. Now, before we move on to our next submission, let's have a small commercial break. Well, hey everybody. Did you know that Agent Fahzaly Gamer has a Patreon?
That's right, and Random Skull is here to help tell you about it.
And that's right, we're doing this announcement together.
And when you subscribe to Patreon, you get to see content early, and of course, make requests for content on YouTube, and even on Twitch and TikTok. It's all up to you.
And of course, if you want to support Agent Fahzaly Gamer, check out these links. And of course, there are also links in the link tree.
And remember, when you subscribe to Patreon, you can also leave a message saying that Random Skull is better than Mr. Announcer.
Now, was that even really necessary? Well, hey there, everybody. Mr. Announcer and
Random Skull?
And we're here to let you know that Agent Fahzaly Gamer also streams live on Twitch 5 days a week, and sometimes on YouTube.
And if you want to continue to support Agent Fahzaly Gamer, check out the links for his Twitch and his YouTube, all in the link tree.
That's right. Check out those links. Alrighty then, everybody. Welcome back. Now, let's get on into our second submission, shall we? But, once again, I want to preface this with, keep in mind, I myself am non-denominational in any form of religion. I have my own beliefs, but I am not part of any form of organized theism. But, nor do I personally have anything against anybody's belief, as long as it's not something that is a belief that harms another, both mentally or physically. Now, that being said, number one focus here on Fahzaly Advice is to talk about the subject at hand, or to help the submitter with the situation that they're dealing with, not to judge them for whatever they believe. Alright? Now, let's get on into our first submission, which is brought to us by Disillusioned Son. And they write, Hey Fahza, so I have a bit of a family problem, and I'm scared because I feel like I am on the precipice of losing my family. My mom and dad are devout Christians, and since I was a kid, they have made me go to church every Sunday, go to Bible studies, the whole 9 yards. After I went to college and got my own place and started living life, well, on my own, I have honestly found myself disillusioned by the practices of my community church. Spending some time away and coming back was really eye-opening to just how homophobic and misogynistic and just plain horrible how not only my church community but my own parents treat others that aren't Christian. It has really shaken my faith and has me considering abandoning my church community, as they not only have no interest in listening and being compassionate, but have now actively attacked me mentally and socially. My own parents have told me that they are disappointed in how far I have strayed from God because I love and accept my friends, no matter whom they choose to love. I am disappointed how far they, as a community, have thrived on hate, which is not how I view the word of Christ. And the inability to evolve is the problem with the state of our religion, and it's just sad. This has created a huge divide between me and my family, and I don't know what to do because I love my family, but it seems like they chose their community over me. What words of wisdom would you have for this situation, Faja? I could use some clarity here. Sincerely, Disillusioned Son. Well, Disillusioned Son. First off, I just want to say sorry to you for going through such a tough situation. Now, when it comes to this particular problem, I hate to say it, but I think you have found your answer in what you stated here in itself. Your family has chosen their community over you. And that community has chosen to actively, mentally, and socially attack you. When it comes to what you're going to be doing moving forward, I can't tell you what to do. What I can tell you is no matter what you choose, you will have to face the consequences of either choice. Either you will have to choose to compromise your beliefs and acquiesce to the way that your parents and your community is for them to accept you, which, trying to sound unbiased, I'm going to fail here, but in truth, that is quite disgusting. I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have to consider compromising how you believe. But that is the consequence of making the choice of accepting your family and your community church as they are, or your church community as they are. Or you're gonna have to stand up for yourself and what you believe in. Doing so, though, will lead you to what you are afraid of: losing your family potentially. Because until they are willing to either open the doors with a conversation, or at the very least even accept you for what you believe in and accept what they believe in for whom they are, and still love you, I'm so sorry, but the way I see it, it kind of leads you to either compromising yourself or facing what you are afraid of. But truly, you as an individual, consider this. I just want you to consider a few things. Don't you deserve better than a community who is not willing to listen and forces you, or is going to force you, to compromise who you are and what you truly believe in? Or are you willing to stand up and be you, believe in what you believe in, and consider that, to stand up and be true to who you are? Because if you truly believe it, you're not going to need others to stand with you to believe in it. Consider that. And as painful as it is to have to cut ties or have to make the consideration to deal with the consequences that your family will either abandon you or for some period of time be non-communicative with you, that is their decision, though. Even if it is a consequence of what may happen, it is their decision because you do not control them. And this might not be the clarity that you're seeking here, but it's a matter of, what do you want? You have to ask yourself this, ultimately. Do you want your family, or do you want to be able to stand by what you believe in? And as terrible as it is, they have put you in this place to make this choice, because they're not willing to move from what it seems like in your submission. And it is quite sad that they're a community that has chosen to thrive on hate, when hate is such a primitive and sad way to look. And I do agree with you. It matters not what someone chooses to do or how they choose to live if it does not harm another. There is no harm in loving them for who they are, as a person, as a friend. That should not be impacting what you believe in and how you choose to stand by what you believe. And I do agree with you here as well in what you say. The inability to evolve is a problem in people and in theism, in belief. Because just as belief has ancient origins, this does not mean that those ancient origins are concrete. It does not mean that that's how it was meant to stay. Life continues to evolve. So does the mentality and the social scape of all in front of us. Within that, belief should also evolve, should it not? But that is a personal opinion. I can't change how people think, nor does how I think matter as a monolith. This is simply how I believe, but that doesn't mean anything to another person or how they believe, or at least it never should. Because they are them and I am me. I should be allowed to be. But it is it is something to consider. It is. And as disappointed as you are, has that not been enough to open your eyes to what you may need to do? I understand why you feel like you're confused. I understand why you think you need clarity. But I'm not saying that this is true. And I'm not saying that this is the case. But it seems like what you're asking here is for someone to give you an answer that is clear and concrete, so that you may make that decision with less weight behind it. But ultimately, no matter what you do, you're the one that's going to have to live with it. This is your life. No one else is going to live your life for you. No one else is going to have to deal with the consequences of whatever action and choices you make, nor will they be privy to the boons of those actions. But that is your responsibility as a person. The only true power that we have as living beings in this world is our ability and power to choose how we'll act, to choose what we'll do in our actions. We cannot choose what will happen in response to that, but we can choose to act. And that is our strength. And that is our responsibility and accountability in life as well. And as daunting as that might seem, it is something that you have to embrace ultimately. I know it's scary. It's scary because no matter what, every decision you make in your life, no matter how small it might seem, has an impact. And it is something to be considered. And as we grow, as we change, as we continuously learn and face life, that will not change. Everything we do will have a consequence and a reward. But there will be never a moment where a decision you make will be devoid of both. It is something that we all will have to accept at one point or another. And that disillusionment will allow for growth to occur. And as you have stated in your own submission, and as well as the name that you have submitted this under, Disillusioned Son, you have had your eyes opened. So what will you choose to do in this instance? Will you choose to close your eyes once more and go back or will you keep them open and move forward? Keep in mind, once again, the consequence is clear for you, as you've stated. No matter what you do, you will either compromise yourself or you will lose something that is important to you. But there's also something that needs to be considered. Just because your parents decide not to listen to you now, doesn't mean that there won't be a future conversation. People change. As much as some people might not think that's true, we are constantly changing. Every day we wake up, we are different. In a minute way or in a drastic way, we are different. And every day we are growing and we are changing. Whether or not we accept that, it's there and it's not stopping. Embrace that as well. And consider that when it comes to your decision, because just because your parents think this now doesn't mean they will think this in the future. There may be an instance where they themselves will have their eyes open. Something to consider. Because just because you stand by what you believe in and will lose something that is important to you, in this instance, for this moment, doesn't mean you can't regain it. Doesn't mean it won't come back. But compromising yourself, that is something you can't take back. That is something that you will have to live with as you move forward until you choose to until you choose to open your eyes once more and believe in yourself more than you want to believe in the community that you think you need. When the reality is you don't need their acceptance for you to be able to be you. Because I think that's what you're afraid of, is losing acceptance. But why is their acceptance so important? When what they're willing to make you do is make you do something that you don't want to, or make you be someone you don't want to be. The acceptance of others is never so important that you have to compromise yourself. It isn't. Because if you are willing to stand in for what you believe in and who you are, there will be others who will stand with you. And in those people, you will find those worthwhile to stand with and to share life with. But ultimately, the decision is yours, my friend. What do you want to do, and what are you willing to shoulder in its consequence? I hope that I was able to help you, disillusioned son. I apologize if I did not give you the answer that you wanted, but the best that I can do is advise you with what I see in my own experiences. But that doesn't mean that I have the right answers. Consider all of this as you move forward, my friend. And I appreciate your submission, and I thank you so very much, my friend. And to all of you viewing, thank you. Now it's time for this love train to get rolling on through. Choo-choo. I love every single freaking one of you. Well, everybody, that's the end of Fahzaly Advice. I hope you did enjoy this episode and you found some value in what I said. And of course, if you are interested in participating, if you need some advice or some perspective, feel free to email the address at the end of this part. And remember, all submissions are 100% anonymous. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Need some perspective? Need some advice? Want your submission read on podcast? Well, email Fahza at fahzalyadvice@gmail.com. And remember, all submissions are 100% anonymous unless requested upon.